My name is Megan Wilson, 28, and tonight changed everything. Across our dining table, my father's words hung in the air like poison. You work and contribute while Cassidy finds herself. Don't like our rules, leave. My mother nodded in agreement while my younger sister smirked into her wine glass. After years of being the family workhorse, while Cassidy, 25, lived consequence-free, something inside me finally snapped. If they wanted me gone, I would leave, but on my terms. Before I dive into what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If this family drama resonates with you already, hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how I transformed from family doormat to the architect of my own revenge. The dinner confrontation shouldn't have surprised me. The pattern started long before I had words to describe it. When I was 7, I won the regional spelling bee. My trophy still sits in our attic gathering dust because my parents skipped the ceremony to attend Cassidy's dance recital. She was playing a tree, not even a speaking role, but Mom insisted Cassidy needs our support more than you do. You're so independent, honey. Independent wasn't a compliment. It was an excuse to neglect me. My birthdays brought practical gifts, educational books, sensible clothes, saving bonds. Cassidy's birthdays transformed our house into wonderlands with expensive presents and elaborate parties. When I turned 16, I received SAT prep books while Cassidy at 13 got a professional-grade camera she abandoned 2 weeks later. Your sister is finding her passions, Mom explained when I questioned the disparity. You already know what you want. What I wanted was equal treatment, but expressing that made me ungrateful and jealous. By high school, I was essentially Cassidy's unpaid babysitter. Watch your sister while we're at work became a daily command, not a request. My social life withered as Cassidy's blossomed. I missed football games and school dances to make sure she did her homework, which she rarely completed anyway. My parents dismissed her C's and D's with not everyone's academically inclined, while expecting nothing less than straight A's from me. College magnified the inequality to painful levels. Despite mediocre grades, Cassidy attended a private university with a $50,000 annual tuition. My parents covered everything: tuition, housing, meal plans, even spending money. Meanwhile, I cobbled together scholarships, loans, and worked 3 part-time jobs to attend state school. When I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in accounting and finance, my father's response was, "At least one of you will be able to support yourself." Cassidy had just switched majors for the 4th time. After graduation, I landed an accounting position at Bennett and Marshall, a prestigious firm in the city. The logical move was getting my own apartment, but student loans made that financially challenging. Reluctantly, I moved back home temporarily to build savings. That temporary arrangement stretched to 3 years, as Cassidy graduated failed at photography, quit an internship at a fashion magazine after 2 weeks tried event planning until she had a meltdown over centerpieces, and cycled through other careers that didn't require actual work. Through it all, she remained at home consequence-free, while I was expected to shoulder increasing responsibilities. The financial imbalance was glaring. I paid $800 monthly rent to my parents to teach financial responsibility, my father said, while Cassidy lived rent-free. I bought groceries, paid utilities, and handled household repairs. Meanwhile, Cassidy's expenses from her car insurance to her exorbitant phone bill remained on our parents' tab. The chore distribution was equally lopsided. I cooked, cleaned, mowed the lawn, and did laundry for the entire household. Cassidy occasionally loaded the dishwasher incorrectly, then expected praise for her contribution. When I mentioned this inequality, my mother would sigh dramatically. "Your sister isn't as capable as you are, Megan. We can't all be perfect." Cassidy wasn't incapable. She was enabled. I'd seen her apartment during college, spotless when she needed to impress someone. She simply knew playing helpless around our parents yielded rewards. The night of the infamous dinner, I had just received a promotion at work. I mentioned it casually, hoping for acknowledgement, maybe even celebration. Mom nodded distractedly. "That's nice, dear." Dad asked, "Will you be able to increase your rent contribution now?" Before I could respond, Cassidy interrupted with news about her latest career idea, interior design. Despite having no training portfolio or clients, she needed $5,000 for a certification program she'd found online. "We'll make it work, Princess Dad," assured her, reaching for his wallet. Family supports family. I couldn't contain myself. "What about supporting me? I've worked hard for years," while Cassidy bounces between careers without consequences. Mom's eyes narrowed. "We support both our daughters. Really, I pay rent and expenses. I handle household chores. Cassidy contributes nothing but still gets financial support for every whim." My father's face hardened. "This house isn't a charity. You work and contribute while Cassidy finds herself. Don't like our rules, leave." The table fell silent. Cassidy's smug expression said everything she'd won again. My mother stared at her plate, avoiding eye contact. My father's cold glare dared me to challenge him. For the first time, their favoritism was explicitly stated rather than implied. The unfairness had finally been spoken aloud, and there was no taking it back. That night I locked myself in my bedroom and cried until my throat burned. The raw pain of their dismissal washed over me in waves. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn their love through achievement and responsibility, but it was never enough. Cassidy would always be their golden child while I remained their workhorse. Around midnight, something shifted inside me. I dried my tears and opened my laptop. If they wanted me gone, I would oblige them, but not how they expected. First, I calculated my finances. 3 years of disciplined saving while living at home had yielded a substantial emergency fund despite my rent payments to my parents. I had $48 0 inches savings, $32 0 inches, my 401k, and minimal debt beyond student loans. My recent promotion increased my annual salary to $78,000. I sent an email to Richard, my supervisor at Bennett, and Marshall inquiring about remote work possibilities. The firm had been moving toward flexible arrangements since the pandemic, and my consistent performance positioned me as an ideal candidate. I emphasized my increased productivity without office distractions and my willingness to come in for quarterly meetings. The next day, I discreetly contacted my college friend Jessica, now a practicing attorney, for legal advice. We met for coffee at a place 20 miles from my parents' home to avoid potential gossip. "You're not just moving out, are you?" Jessica asked, studying my expression. "You're planning something more strategic." I nodded. "I'm cutting ties completely, but I need to protect myself legally and financially. What should I know?" Jessica outlined important steps, removing my parents as beneficiaries from insurance policies, checking my credit report for any joint accounts, securing personal documents, and establishing clear financial boundaries. "Family financial entanglements can get messy," she warned, "especially when they're used to accessing your resources." She recommended Martin Reynolds, a financial advisor specializing in family wealth transitions. Martin helped me analyze my investment options and create a financial firewall between myself and my parents. "Your parents' retirement situation seems concerning," Martin noted after reviewing the limited information I had. "Based on what you've shared, they're significantly behind on savings and counting on home equity to fund their later years." This aligned with patterns I'd observed. My parents frequently mentioned being house-rich, cash-poor, and joked about moving in with me when they retired. It wasn't a joke. It was their unstated plan. Further investigation, accessing mail addressed to my parents that I routinely sorted, revealed disturbing details. Their mortgage had been refinanced 3 times, their credit cards carried high balances, and their retirement accounts held less than $100,000 combined. At 58 and 60, their financial future looked precarious. The source of their financial strain became clear, Cassidy. Beyond her education costs, they'd funded her series of failed ventures, the photography equipment, the event planning certification, the fashion blog that required designer clothes. Each abandoned dream represented thousands of dollars down the drain. Meanwhile, Cassidy's Instagram told a different story than her struggling artist narrative at home. Photos showed expensive restaurant meals, weekend getaways, and shopping sprees with captions like "Self-care isn't selfish number, blessed number, treat yourself." More disturbing were her private Twitter posts to friends that I discovered through a mutual acquaintance. "Parents are such pushovers, lol. Just told them I need certification money, but really getting those Louboutins I showed you, and why work when crying gets you what you want? Sister's such a sucker for the responsible act." The pieces formed a clear picture. I wasn't just the family workhorse. I was their retirement plan. My parents enabled Cassidy's lifestyle, assuming I would support all of us eventually. The expectation that I would remain home contributing financially while Cassidy found herself wasn't temporary, it was their long-term strategy. With this understanding, my exit plan crystallized. I created a detailed timeline. Week 1, secure remote work approval. Week 2, find apartment in Westbrook, 45 minutes away. Week 3, transfer documents and valuables to safety deposit box. Week 4, move essential items gradually. Week 5, execute final move and announcement. Each step required careful planning. I opened new bank accounts at a different bank, requested a credit freeze to prevent unauthorized accounts, and updated all passwords. I gathered my birth certificate, social security card, passport, and other essential documents from my parents' filing cabinet during their weekend visit to Cassidy's art show. I began packing incrementally, taking small loads to a storage unit I rented under a LLC Jessica helped me establish. Each day I removed items my family wouldn't immediately notice: winter clothes, books, sentimental objects, professional resources. The first sign of suspicion came when my mother noticed my diplomas missing from the wall. "Spring cleaning," I explained casually. "They're being reframed." She seemed satisfied with the explanation, but I caught her checking my closet the next day. I responded by visibly unpacking some new work clothes and arranging them prominently, creating the illusion of permanence. The chess game had begun, and for once I was thinking several moves ahead. Maintaining a facade of normalcy while orchestrating my exit required constant vigilance. At breakfast, I complained about office politics. At dinner, I discussed traffic challenges. I continued performing household chores, though less meticulously, and paid my rent on schedule. To all appearances, I remained the reliable daughter they'd always taken for granted. Behind the scenes, my new life took shape. Richard approved my remote work arrangement, impressed by my detailed proposal and productivity metrics. "You've consistently exceeded expectations," he said during our private call. "We'd rather accommodate your needs than lose your talent." I secured a modern one-bedroom apartment in Westbrook, a charming town with tree-lined streets and a vibrant downtown. The building offered secure entry, in-unit laundry, and most importantly, anonymity. I signed the lease under my LLC, paid 3 months up front, and arranged for utilities without alerting my family. Each weekday, I left home in professional attire as usual. 3 days a week, I actually went to the office to maintain appearances. The other 2 days, I drove to my new apartment to set up my home office, arrange furniture deliveries, and create the sanctuary I'd never been allowed at my parents' house. Cassidy grew suspicious first. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen at midnight as I wrapped leftover lasagna for my lunch. "You're up to something," she said, leaning against the refrigerator with crossed arms. "You're never home on Tuesdays and Thursdays anymore, and you've been taking boxes to your car when Mom and Dad aren't looking." My heart raced, but I maintained a neutral expression. "I'm working late and going to the gym. Not everyone has the luxury of finding themselves indefinitely." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm telling Mom and Dad you're moving stuff out. They'll freak." "Go ahead," I replied calmly. "While you're explaining that, I'll mention the Instagram posts about the business trip to Miami that was actually a weekend with Brandon, the boyfriend they've forbidden you from seeing." Her face paled. "You wouldn't. Try me. We both have secrets, Cassidy. The difference is I'm an adult who doesn't need permission for my choices." This temporary stalemate bought me time, but my parents soon tested my commitment through escalating demands. Suddenly, I needed to drive my mother to appointments despite her perfectly functional car. My father needed help organizing his home office on weekends. The lawn required more frequent mowing despite minimal growth. These tests coincided with increased flattery. "You're so capable," Megan Mom would say. "No one handles things like you do." "The family depends on you," Dad added, during a rare moment of praise. Their manipulation tactics were transparent now that I recognized them. Each compliment disguised an expectation. Each request reinforced my role as family caretaker. I documented every financial contribution to build a clear picture of my exploitation. Beyond the $800 monthly rent, I paid approximately $350 for groceries, $220 for utilities, and hundreds more for household repairs and incidentals. Calculating conservatively, I'd contributed over $60,000 to my parents' household in 3 years, while Cassidy contributed nothing but received constant financial support. As my departure approached, I focused on building a support network outside my family. I reconnected with Amber Jenkins, my childhood friend who'd experienced similar dynamics with her brother. We drifted apart in high school when my family obligations prevented normal teenage socializing. "I always wondered what happened to you," Amber said during our coffee reunion. "You just disappeared from everything." I explained my family situation, finally giving voice to years of inequity. "Classic golden child, divided by scapegoat dynamic," Amber nodded. "My therapist helped me understand it wasn't my fault. Nothing I did would have changed my parents' perception. This perspective was revolutionary. I'd always assumed if I achieved enough, helped enough, sacrificed enough, my parents would finally see my worth." Amber introduced me to online support forums where adult children of emotionally immature parents shared similar experiences. The validation was both healing and heartbreaking. At work, I developed a deeper friendship with Thomas Kelly, a fellow accountant who noticed my increasingly distant behavior during team lunches. "Whatever you're going through," he said after a particularly quiet day, "you don't have to handle it alone." His simple offer of support cracked my carefully constructed professional veneer. I shared enough for him to understand without oversharing a skill I was still developing after years of having my feelings dismissed at home. Thomas became an unexpected ally, covering for me during apartment viewings and offering his truck for moving larger items. "My parents played favorites with my sister too," he explained. "Sometimes distance is the only healthy choice." A week before my planned exit, I had a close call when my father needed tax documents and nearly discovered my apartment lease in my home office. I'd stepped away to answer a work call, returning to find him rifling through my desk drawer. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, heart pounding. He startled slightly. "Tax season's coming up. Thought I'd get a head start." I directed him to the appropriate folder, while discreetly moving my body between him and the drawer containing my new life's paperwork. That evening, I relocated all remaining sensitive documents to my safety deposit box. The stress of the double life manifested physically. One Tuesday afternoon, after an intense morning of moving boxes, while my family thought I was at work, I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot and couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, my vision tunneled, and sweat drenched my blouse despite the January chill. A panic attack, my first ever. As I gasped for air, doubts flooded my mind. Was I making a terrible mistake? Would this estrange me from my family forever? Was I overreacting to normal family dynamics? I called Dr. Williams, the therapist I'd started seeing secretly 2 months prior. "What you're experiencing is normal when breaking unhealthy patterns," she assured me. "Your body is responding to years of stress and the fear of change. This reaction doesn't mean you're making the wrong choice. It means you're finally prioritizing yourself after years of conditioning to do otherwise." Her words steadied me enough to drive to my new apartment. Standing in the empty living room that would soon be filled with my carefully chosen furniture items selected for my preferences alone, I recommitted to my plan. This space represented more than independence. It symbolized my refusal to remain the family scapegoat any longer. 3 weeks before my planned departure, I began implementing subtle changes designed to shift family dynamics without raising alarms. Each small action created ripples that would eventually build to a tidal wave. I forgot to perform specific household tasks that benefited Cassidy directly. Her laundry remained unwashed, despite multiple reminders. Her favorite snacks disappeared from grocery lists. The Wi-Fi mysteriously slowed during her streaming marathons, but worked perfectly when I needed it for work projects. When confronted, I responded with the same excuses Cassidy had perfected. Sorry, I've been so busy, or it completely slipped my mind, or my personal favorite, I thought you were handling that yourself. My mother's frustration grew palpable as she picked up tasks I strategically dropped. Megan, your sister's clothes need washing, she complained one evening. Cassidy's 25, I replied without looking up from my laptop. Shouldn't she learn basic adulting skills? You know she's not good at domestic things, Mom huffed. Maybe because she's never had to be, I suggested, mildly returning to my spreadsheet as Mom stormed off to handle Cassidy's laundry herself. Each small abdication forced tiny adjustments in family roles. Dad had to take over lawn maintenance when I claimed a sudden grass allergy. Mom found herself cooking more often when I started working late. Cassidy faced minor inconveniences that triggered disproportionate tantrums, revealing her complete incapacity for disappointment. The change in grocery shopping particularly disrupted household harmony. I misunderstood Cassidy's specific yogurt preferences, bringing home plain Greek instead of her preferred honey vanilla. I purchased regular coffee instead of her expensive cold brew concentrate. I substituted generic cereal for her name brand requirement. Each substitution prompted dramatic complaints. This isn't what I asked for, she'd wail as though I'd committed a grave injustice rather than a shopping oversight. The store was out, I'd explain with fabricated patience. You could try shopping yourself next time to ensure you get exactly what you want. My parents, accustomed to placating Cassidy's outbursts, found themselves caught between her escalating demands and my decreasing accommodation. The mounting tension created the perfect cover for my final preparations. Cassidy's friend Tiffany asked if I could babysit her 4-year-old son, a regular commitment I'd honored for months despite receiving no compensation. Sorry, I have plans Friday, I said, offering no alternative. But you always watch, Jamie, Tiffany protested. Things change, I replied simply. My unavailability created a cascade effect. Tiffany asked Cassidy, who immediately volunteered my parents without consulting them. Dad missed his poker night, triggering rare friction between him and Cassidy when he expressed frustration. Megan always handles these things, I overheard him complain. Well, she's being totally selfish lately, Cassidy countered. Their argument revealed how thoroughly they'd come to depend on my servitude without appreciating it. The realization strengthened my resolve. At a family dinner 2 weeks before my planned exit, I strategically mentioned a job opportunity in Westbrook. Bennett and Marshall is opening a satellite office, I said, casually loading the dishwasher. They've asked if I'd consider transferring. The reaction was immediate and revealing. Absolutely not, Dad dismissed without hesitation. The commute would be ridiculous. We need you here, Mom added, anxiety creasing her forehead. Family should stay together. Cassidy's reaction proved most telling. You can't leave, she practically shouted. Who's going to help around here? Not one of them asked about the opportunity's benefits for my career or happiness. Their responses centered exclusively on how my potential move would affect them, further confirmation that my decision was justified. I nodded non-committally and changed the subject, but their reactions exposed the self-interest masquerading as family loyalty. That night I recorded their comments in the journal I'd been keeping, documentation of the patterns I could no longer unsee. The next evening I positioned myself near the kitchen while my parents thought I was showering. Their conversation confirmed my suspicions about their long-term expectations. Cassidy will never manage on her own, Mom sighed. Not everyone is born responsible like Megan. Megan understands family obligation, Dad agreed. Once she gets past this independent phase, she'll settle down. Probably marry someone practical and buy a house nearby. We can help with Cassidy until then. Their casual assumption of my lifelong servitude as Cassidy's eventual caretaker solidified my determination. I was not merely leaving a dysfunctional household. I was escaping a future they'd planned without my consent. My final week at home involved methodical preparation. I completed my last day in office at Bennett and Marshall, where colleagues celebrated my transition to remote work with a small gathering. Richard pulled me aside afterward. "I sense there's more to this move than professional development," he said quietly. "Whatever you're navigating, your work family has your back." His perceptiveness brought unexpected tears. I'd received more genuine support from colleagues than from my actual family. While my parents and Cassidy attended her friend's wedding that weekend, I executed the final phase, transferring remaining belongings to my apartment. Thomas helped move my bed, desk, and bookshelf, the last significant items that would immediately signal my departure. That evening, I returned to my parents' house one last time. My room looked staged. Essential items remained visible but held no personal value. The closet contained enough clothes for appearance's sake. The desk displayed textbooks I no longer needed. To casual observation, nothing significant had changed. I lay awake that night, remembering the childhood dreams I'd nursed in this very room, dreams of parental approval that never materialized achievements, that never earned the recognition freely given to Cassidy for minimal effort. Tomorrow, everything would change. As anxiety and anticipation battled within me, I reminded myself of Dr. Williams' guidance. "You're not abandoning your family. You're refusing to abandon yourself any longer." The final family dinner began like any other Sunday gathering. Mom prepared her traditional pot roast, my favorite, though I suspected the choice was unconscious rather than intentional appreciation. Dad discussed golf scores. Cassidy dominated conversation with dramatic tales from her friend's wedding. I maintained my role as attentive listener, knowing it would be the last time I performed it. As dessert concluded apple pie with ice cream that I'd strategically purchased, I took a deep breath and placed my house key on the table. "I've decided to take your suggestion," I said, looking directly at my father. "I'm leaving." The statement hung in the air for 3 heartbeats before reactions cascaded. "What suggestion?" Mom asked, confusion wrinkling her brow. "Dad said if I didn't like the rules here, I should leave," I reminded them calmly. "I've given it careful thought, and he's right. This arrangement isn't working for me anymore." Dad's face reddened. "Don't be dramatic, Megan." That was said in the heat of the moment. Nevertheless, it was honest, I replied. And it helped me realize some important truths about our family dynamic. Cassidy's expression transformed from shock to panic. "You can't just leave. Where would you even go?" "I've secured an apartment in Westbrook," I explained, maintaining composure despite my racing heart. "I've arranged to work remotely. Everything's finalized." Westbrook, Mom repeated weakly. "But that's nearly an hour away." 45 minutes, I corrected. A reasonable distance. Dad's initial shock morphed to anger, his default response to situations beyond his control. "This is ridiculous. You can't possibly afford an apartment on your own. You need to save for your future." "My finances are in excellent shape," I countered. 3 years of living here while paying rent and expenses has taught me solid money management. His face darkened further. "So you've been planning this betrayal for months, behind our backs." 3 weeks, actually, I clarified. "Since you explicitly told me to leave if I didn't like being treated differently than Cassidy." "We never treated you differently," Mom protested, tears forming. "We've always loved both our girls equally." The blatant denial ignited something within me. I reached for my prepared folder and withdrew the documentation I'd assembled. "In the past 3 years, I've paid $28, 800 inches rent to live in my childhood bedroom. I've contributed $12, 600 to groceries, $7, 920 to utilities, and $4, 350 to household repairs." I slid the spreadsheet across the table. "Cassidy has contributed $0 while receiving approximately $22 0 inches direct financial support, including her car insurance, phone bill, and failed business ventures." The color drained from my father's face as he glanced at the meticulously organized figures. Additionally, I continued, I've performed approximately 20 hours of household labor, weekly cooking, cleaning, yard work, and maintenance, while Cassidy averages less than 2 hours, primarily loading the dishwasher incorrectly. Cassidy's face contorted with indignation. That's not fair. I do plenty around here. Like what I challenged, meeting her gaze directly for perhaps the first time in our adult lives. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly before she defaulted to tears, her standard tactic when confronted with uncomfortable truths. You're making your sister cry, Mom accused, rushing to comfort Cassidy. Facts made her cry, I corrected. I'm simply stating reality. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough. This family doesn't operate like a business with balance sheets. We support each other according to needs. Exactly, I agreed. Cassidy's needs always supersede mine. Her education, her career experiments, her lifestyle, all prioritized above my basic respect and equality. We've supported your education and career, Mom protested. No, I supported myself through scholarships, loans, and multiple jobs I countered. You supported Cassidy through her education and subsequent failures, while expecting me to subsidize this household and eventually support all of you. Dad's expression confirmed my assessment. This is how family works, he insisted. The strong help the weak. That philosophy only functions when everyone contributes according to ability, I explained. Cassidy isn't weak, she's enabled. And I'm not obligated to subsidize that enabling any longer. So you're just abandoning your family, Mom's voice rose tearfully. After everything we've done for you, the guilt-inducing question might have worked months ago. Now I recognized it as manipulation. I'm not abandoning anyone, I replied evenly. I'm establishing healthy boundaries. I'll always be your daughter and Cassidy's sister, but I won't be the family workhorse anymore. If you walk out that door, Dad threatened, don't expect financial help when you fail on your own. The irony of his statement, given I'd been financially independent for years while they continuously supported Cassidy, wasn't lost on me. I won't need it, I assured him, standing to retrieve my jacket. My personal belongings have already been moved. I've left the bedroom furniture since it belongs to the house. You've been moving out secretly, Mom gasped. How could you be so underhanded? Would you have allowed me to leave otherwise? I asked simply. Their silence answered more eloquently than words. Cassidy's tears escalated to hysterical sobbing. You can't just leave me, she wailed. What about family loyalty? Loyalty works both ways, I reminded her gently. When's the last time you showed loyalty to me? Her inability to answer spoke volumes. I moved toward the door, bracing for the emotional onslaught. Mom followed, alternating between tears and anger. Families stick together through everything, she insisted. You're tearing us apart. I'm prioritizing my well-being, I corrected. Something I learned to do despite not because of my upbringing. Dad resorted to financial threats, his primary language. Don't come running back when you can't make rent. Your sister needs that money for her interior design business. Cassidy will need to fund her own ventures, I suggested. Perhaps through employment. The concept appeared genuinely shocking to them. As I reached my car, Cassidy rushed out, her tactical tears momentarily suspended. You selfish bitch, she shouted, abandoning pretense. Who's going to do everything now? Her question revealed the crux of their distress, not concern for my welfare, but loss of convenience. That's for the three of you to figure out, I answered, closing my car door and driving away from the only home I'd known toward the life I deserved. In my rearview mirror, I glimpsed them standing in the driveway, Mom crying dramatically, Dad shouting inaudibly, Cassidy staring in disbelief that her support system had finally developed a backbone. The image grew smaller as I accelerated toward freedom relief, gradually replacing anxiety with each mile marker. The first week of independence felt surreal. After years of constant noise, Cassidy's complaints, Mom's demands, Dad's criticisms, the silence of my apartment seemed almost disconcerting. No one interrupted my work, calls, borrowed my clothes without permission, or expected dinner preparation after a 10-hour workday. I established new routines centered around my preferences rather than others' demands. I woke naturally at 6:30 a.m. instead of 5:00 a.m. to prepare family breakfast. I ate when hungry rather than according to others' schedules. I exercised without interruption and worked efficiently without Cassidy's constant drama. The messages began flowing immediately. Mom alternated between guilt-inducing pleas and passive-aggressive jabs. How could you abandon us when we need you most? Dad's blood pressure is through the roof because of your selfishness. The house is falling apart without you. I hope you're happy knowing your family is suffering. Call me when you decide to stop tearing this family apart. Dad's communications were briefer and colder. Return home, and we'll forget this foolishness. Your sister is devastated by your betrayal. This childish rebellion ends now. You have responsibilities. Cassidy's texts ranged from begging to accusatory. Please come back. I miss you so much. Mom made me do all the dishes and my own laundry because of you. You've always been jealous of me. Now everyone's miserable. I responded, minimally establishing boundaries while avoiding unnecessary conflict. I'm safe and well. I need space to adjust to my new living situation. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk. The approaching Thanksgiving holiday, my first major celebration away from family, intensified their campaign. Relatives I barely spoke with suddenly called, expressing concern about my well-being, transparently fishing for information, while delivering thinly veiled messages from my parents. Your mother is heartbroken, Aunt Patricia reported. She can't understand why you'd abandon the family right before the holidays. Your father says your room is waiting whenever you come to your senses, Uncle Steve relayed. I maintained consistent responses. This was a necessary step for my well-being. I appreciate your concern, but this is between my parents and me. Their escalation tactics became increasingly desperate. Mom and Dad appeared unannounced at Bennett and Marshall's main office, thankfully, on a day I wasn't physically present. Richard called immediately. Your parents are here demanding your home address, he informed me. I explained our privacy policy prohibits sharing employee information. They're quite insistent. I'm so sorry. I apologized, embarrassed by their behavior. No apology necessary, Richard assured me. We take employee privacy seriously. Just wanted you aware in case they try your remote workspace. Their ambush attempt confirmed I'd made the right decision securing an apartment through an LLC. The following week, Cassidy called sobbing hysterically that she'd been hospitalized with severe abdominal pain and needed me immediately. Concerned, despite our strained relationship, I contacted the hospital directly only to discover she'd been treated for mild indigestion and released hours earlier. The manufactured health crisis represented a new low in manipulation tactics. When I texted her that I'd verified her condition with the hospital, she responded with angry emojis and blocked my number temporarily, as it turned out. She unblocked me the following day to request money for medical expenses. As predicted, my extended family received a distorted version of events. Cassidy's social media portrayed her as the devastated sister abandoned by her mentally unstable sibling. My parents apparently told relatives I'd had some kind of breakdown and abandoned my responsibilities without warning. This false narrative began unraveling when inconsistencies emerged. My cousin Rachel called after Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house. Something doesn't add up, she confided. Your mom told me you left because you couldn't handle adult responsibilities, but then your dad mentioned you're working remotely for a prestigious firm. Cassidy complained about doing basic chores that any adult should manage. The whole story seems off. Rachel's skepticism opened the door for honest conversation about the family dynamics I'd endured. After our talk, she connected me with other relatives who'd noticed the preferential treatment but never intervened. We should have said something, my Aunt Linda admitted during a coffee meeting. We saw how differently they treated you girls, but family dynamics are complicated to address from the outside. These honest connections with extended family provided unexpected support during difficult moments. The first major emotional challenge came during a severe thunderstorm 3 weeks after my departure. As lightning illuminated my unfamiliar apartment and thunder-rattled windows, childhood fears resurfaced. I found myself reaching for my phone to call home before remembering that home no longer represented safety. I sat alone in the dark, tears streaming as I confronted not just the storm but the reality of my severed family ties. The urge to call my parents to seek familiar comfort despite its toxicity felt overwhelming. Instead, I called my support group hotline, where a volunteer named Kevin talked me through grounding techniques until the panic subsided. The hardest part of breaking unhealthy patterns, he reminded me, is weathering the storms without returning to familiar shelters that were actually causing the damage. The support group connected me with others who'd experienced similar family dynamics. Weekly meetings provided validation and perspective I'd never received growing up. The golden child divided by scapegoat dynamic isn't your imagination, explained Dr. Williams during therapy. It's a recognized pattern in dysfunctional families. Your achievements threatened the established order, so they were minimized while your sister's endeavors received disproportionate support to maintain the status quo. Understanding the psychological framework behind my family's behavior helped transform personal hurt into objective analysis. I wasn't defective or unlovable. I'd been assigned a role that served my parents' emotional needs regardless of its impact on me. The most healing revelation came from Amber's therapist, who joined one of our coffee dates with permission. Children don't have to earn their parents' love, she emphasized. That love should be freely given, not contingent on achievement or servitude. You deserved better, Megan. Your worth isn't determined by what you provide to others. This simple statement that love shouldn't require earning contradicted everything my childhood had taught me. The realization brought both grief for what should have been and liberation from the impossible standards I'd internalized. As Christmas approached, Thomas invited me to his family's celebration after hearing I planned to spend the holiday alone. Fair warning, he joked, my mom will try to feed you until you explode, my dad will show you his model train collection, and my siblings will interrogate you mercilessly about your job. But they're good people who understand family isn't always simple. His invitation offered glimpses of healthy family dynamics I'd never experienced. His parents disagreed without contempt. Siblings teased without cruelty. Differences were respected rather than weaponized. Most shockingly, contributions were appreciated rather than expected. After careful consideration, I sent my parents and Cassidy simple Christmas cards with personal notes expressing hopes for future healing but maintaining my boundaries. I declined their dinner invitations, suggesting we might consider family counseling in the new year if they were interested in rebuilding our relationship on healthier terms. Their response, angry texts accusing me of ruining Christmas and choosing strangers over family, confirmed I'd made the right decision. Real healing couldn't begin until they acknowledged the dysfunctional patterns that had driven me away. As the new year approached, I reflected on the profound changes 3 months of independence had created. Beyond the physical separation, I'd begun dismantling internal patterns that perpetuated my role as family caretaker. I recognized manipulation tactics that previously would have triggered immediate compliance. I established boundaries without apologizing for my needs. Most importantly, I stopped measuring my worth by others' approval. The voice in my head that constantly whispered not enough gradually quieted as I built a life aligned with my authentic self rather than others' expectations. 3 months after my departure, the carefully constructed family system began showing significant cracks. The first indication came through my cousin Rachel, who called after visiting my parents' home. "The place looks different," she reported. "The lawn needs mowing, mail is piling up, and there were actual dirty dishes in the sink. Your mom seemed overwhelmed by basic household management." This outward disarray reflected deeper systemic collapse. Without my financial contributions and household labor, my parents faced the natural consequences of their enabling behavior. The reality they'd avoided through my servitude could no longer be ignored. Cassidy's employment saga illustrated their adjustment struggles. After my departure created a financial shortfall, my parents finally insisted she find work. She secured a position as an administrative assistant at a local real estate office, only to quit after 2 weeks when her supervisor unfairly expected her to arrive on time and complete assigned tasks. "It's not my fault," she reportedly complained to our mother. "They expected me to answer phones and file paperwork. I'm not designed for menial labor." Rather than recognizing this attitude as the product of their enabling my parents, apparently accepted her assessment and funded yet another career exploration online courses in social media management that she abandoned halfway through. The financial strain became increasingly apparent. My father's casual mention of being a little behind on bills to Uncle Steve translated to missing a mortgage payment for the first time in 15 years. Their credit card debt climbed as they maintained Cassidy's lifestyle, despite the loss of my monthly contributions. My Aunt Linda provided further insights during our monthly lunch. "Your parents seem confused by the natural consequences of their choices," she observed. "They genuinely don't connect their current struggles with their treatment of you. In their minds, you've simply abandoned your responsibilities, not reclaimed your independence." This disconnect emerged clearly in their contradicting narratives to different family members. To some, they presented themselves as victims of an ungrateful daughter. To others, they insisted everything was fine despite visible evidence otherwise. These inconsistencies gradually eroded the family's acceptance of their version of events. The tipping point came during Easter dinner when my grandmother directly challenged their narrative. "I've heard enough different stories about Megan's departure," she apparently announced. "What exactly happened?" Their fumbling explanation exposed the holes in their victim narrative. My sister's interjection, "Megan just couldn't handle responsibility," prompted laughter from relatives who'd observed her perpetual unemployment and dependence. "My grandmother never won for social niceties," reportedly responded. "The same responsibility you're handling by living off your parents at 25. That kind of responsibility." This public questioning initiated wider family recognition of the dysfunctional patterns I'd escaped. Extended family began reaching out with newfound understanding, and in some cases, apologies for enabling the system through silence. 6 months after leaving, I received an unexpected email from my mother. The subject line, "Financial advice needed," revealed more than its content. "Megan, I hope this finds you well. Your father and I are facing some unexpected expenses and wondered if you might consider lending us $3,000 until we sort things out. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Love, Mom." The email contained no acknowledgement of our estrangement, no recognition of the issues driving my departure, not even genuine inquiry about my welfare. Just a financial request framed as though our relationship remained unchanged, except for my physical location. After consulting with Dr. Williams, I crafted a measured response. "Mom, I'm not comfortable entering a financial relationship given our current circumstances. I'd welcome conversation about rebuilding our relationship based on mutual respect, perhaps with professional guidance. If you're experiencing financial hardship, I suggest consulting a financial advisor. Wishing you well, Megan." Her reply came swiftly. "We don't need therapy. We need family loyalty during difficult times. Your sister would help if she could." The implication that Cassidy would help, if capable, despite her history of financial irresponsibility, while I wouldn't, despite my capacity, revealed their unchanged perspective. The family roles remained rigidly assigned, regardless of reality. As summer approached, my parents attempted reconciliation with clear ulterior motives. Dad called suggesting dinner to put this unpleasantness behind us, while mentioning in the same conversation that their air conditioning needed expensive repairs. Mom texted inviting me for coffee, just us girls, before casually asking if I could help Cassidy prepare for a job interview by lending her professional clothes and driving her to the appointment. Each contact confirmed their unchanged perception of my role. They weren't seeking relationship restoration. They wanted service restoration. The pattern was so ingrained they couldn't conceive of interaction with me that didn't involve meeting their needs. I maintained consistent boundaries with brief, kind responses. I'm not available for that, but I appreciate the invitation. I remain open to family counseling when you're ready. My refusal to re-engage on their terms created frustration that manifested in Cassidy's escalating social media campaign. Her posts evolved from subtle digs to direct accusations. Some people think career success matters more than family loyalty number disappointed. Paying for everything myself because someone abandoned the family number, adulting number struggle. When toxic people leave your life, you realize who truly cares. Number blessed, number better off. The manufactured narrative contradicted reality. She remained financially dependent on our parents while I lived independently, but garnered sympathy from uninformed acquaintances. 7 months post-departure, Christmas cards arrived from extended family containing revealing information. My parents had been forced to acknowledge some financial reality, informing relatives they were downsizing to a smaller home because the current house is too large for just 3 people. The phrasing attempted to normalize a necessity as a choice while erasing my existence with the just 3 people reference. Public records confirmed they'd listed their house, their primary retirement asset, months earlier than planned. My sister's social media documented her response to this development. Having to move because some people don't understand family obligation. Number betrayed, number heartbroken. Her posts revealed increasingly desperate attempts to maintain her lifestyle despite changing circumstances. Photos showed new purchases with captions about self-care, while she simultaneously complained about financial hardship. She cycled through short-term jobs, each ending when employers expected reasonable performance. My parents' enabling continued despite diminished resources. They funded her brief interest in becoming a life coach, ironic given her inability to manage her own life, and continued covering her basic expenses while deferring their retirement plans. As the 1-year mark of my departure approached, I found myself reflecting on the parallel paths our lives had taken. While my family remained trapped in dysfunctional patterns, I'd built genuine independence and healthier relationships. The contrast wasn't satisfying as much as sobering evidence of how deeply entrenched destructive family systems can become without intervention. 6 months into my independence, my life transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined while living under my parents' roof. The most significant change came professionally when Richard called with unexpected news. "The regional manager position is open," he announced. "The leadership team unanimously recommends you apply." The promotion represented a substantial increase in responsibility and compensation. More importantly, it validated my capabilities beyond my family's dismissive assessment. After a rigorous interview process, I received the offer complete with a $15,000 salary increase and enhanced benefits package. Your performance during family crisis demonstrates exceptional resilience and focus, the senior partner noted during my acceptance meeting. Those qualities distinguish good accountants from outstanding leaders. The professional recognition I'd always sought from my family came instead from mentors who recognized my value without expecting servitude in return. My social circle expanded beyond family-approved connections. I joined a book club, volunteered at a literacy center, and enrolled in photography classes, interests I'd suppressed under the weight of family obligations. Each activity introduced me to people who knew me solely as Megan, not as Cassidy's responsible sister or my parents' reliable daughter. Amber remained my steadfast friend, celebrating my victories and providing perspective during difficult moments. Thomas and I developed a closer friendship that gradually evolved into cautious dating, a relationship built on mutual respect rather than obligation or dependency. "You're different now," he observed during dinner celebrating my promotion. "More confident, less apologetic about existing." His observation captured the internal shift accompanying my external changes. I'd stopped prefacing opinions with qualifiers, making decisions without seeking approval, and trusting my judgment without constant second-guessing. Dr. Williams noted similar progress during our bi-weekly sessions. "Your language has changed," she pointed out. You used to say, I should, constantly reflecting, internalized family expectations. Now you say, I want or I choose, reflecting authentic agency. This evolving sense of self emerged in unexpected ways. I redecorated my apartment according to my aesthetic preferences rather than practical considerations. I experimented with personal style after years of choosing clothes primarily for others' approval. I established routines prioritizing my well-being instead of perpetually deferring self-care. These positive developments apparently reached my sister's awareness through mutual acquaintances and social media. 6 months after our last contact, Cassidy appeared unannounced at my apartment building's entrance, visible on the security camera, requesting access. After careful consideration, I buzzed her in establishing clear mental boundaries before opening my door. Wow, she said, surveying my apartment. This is actually nice. The surprise in her voice revealed her expectation that independence would result in diminished circumstances rather than improvement, the narrative our parents had likely reinforced. Thank you, I replied neutrally. What brings you here, Cassidy? Her typically confident demeanor faltered. Things at home are different since you left. This simple acknowledgement, the first recognition that my departure had consequences, opened space for actual conversation. Over cautious cups of tea, Cassidy described the changing family dynamics, increased parental expectations, household responsibilities, financial constraints. Dad's always angry about bills, she confided. Mom cries when she thinks no one's watching. They're selling the house because they can't afford it anymore. While her description lacked self-awareness regarding her role in these challenges, it represented more honesty than she'd shown in years. I'm sorry they're struggling, I said sincerely. Financial stress is difficult. They miss you, she offered tentatively. We all do. The statement seemed genuine despite its contrast with her social media narrative portraying my absence as liberation rather than loss. I miss aspects of family too, I acknowledged. But the dynamic wasn't healthy for anyone, including you. She looked startled by this assessment. Me, I wasn't the one working all the time. Exactly, I explained gently. You weren't allowed to develop competence or independence. That creates a different kind of harm. This perspective that our parents' favoritism damaged her development, as much as it burdened me, seemed to penetrate briefly before her defenses reasserted. I just need time to find my passion, she insisted, reverting to familiar justifications. Despite the conversation's limitations, it felt like potential progress. When Cassidy asked if she could crash for a few days following an argument with our parents about her newest abandoned job, I cautiously agreed with clear terms. You can stay on the sofa for 3 nights, I stipulated. I need advance notice before any visits afterward, and I expect basic household consideration, cleaning up after yourself, respecting quiet hours during my workday. She agreed readily, appearing genuinely grateful for the accommodation. The first evening seemed promising. She ordered dinner delivery for both of us, asked appropriate questions about my life, and even washed dishes afterward, behavior so uncharacteristic I nearly checked for fever. The second day, I noticed subtle changes. She answered a work call in my home office despite my request to use the living room during business hours. She borrowed my toiletries without asking. Small boundary violations that individually seemed petty to address but collectively established a concerning pattern. On the third day, returning early from a lunch meeting, I found Cassidy at my desk frantically minimizing screens as I entered. Just checking email, she explained unconvincingly. That evening, I awoke to sounds in my home office around midnight. Through the cracked door, I observed Cassidy photographing financial documents with her phone, focusing particularly on my recent promotion paperwork and banking information. The final confirmation came when I overheard her phone conversation from the bathroom the following morning, apparently believing the shower noise would cover her words. I'll be home tonight with everything we need, she assured someone, presumably our parents. She's doing really well, making way more money than we thought. The promotion letter shows her new salary. Yes, I checked her investment accounts too. No, she has no idea I'm looking. Don't worry, she feels sorry for me. I can totally convince her to move back once we show her how bad things are without her. The betrayal, while painful, wasn't entirely surprising. Cassidy had never developed ethical boundaries because she'd never faced consequences for violating them. Her behavior reflected our parents' values, family entitlement superseded individual boundaries. When she emerged from the bathroom, I confronted her directly, phone in hand, recording our conversation after her repeated deceptions. I know you've been going through my financial documents and reporting back to Mom and Dad, I stated calmly. I need you to leave immediately. Her expression cycled rapidly through shock, denial, and anger before settling on familiar tears. You're misunderstanding. I was just curious about your job because I'm considering accounting too. I heard your phone conversation, I countered. You explicitly discussed photographing my documents and developing a strategy to manipulate me into moving home. The facade crumbled. You don't understand how hard it's been, she shouted. They expect me to do everything you used to do and get a job. The house is being sold. Nothing's the same. Those are natural consequences of the family dynamic, not my responsibility to fix, I explained, maintaining calm despite her escalation. Please gather your belongings. You need to leave now. Her emotional tactics, escalating tears, accusations of betrayal, claims of misunderstanding had no effect. After years of conditioning to respond to her distress with caretaking, my non-reaction clearly unsettled her. You've changed, she accused, grabbing her overnight bag. You used to care about family. I still care, I corrected. But caring doesn't require sacrificing my well-being or tolerating exploitation. That's the difference. After her departure, I discovered additional violations, email accounts, accessed financial apps, opened, even photos taken of my personal journal. The systematic invasion extended beyond financial curiosity to comprehensive information gathering. Recognizing the potential for identity theft given the sensitive information she'd accessed, I filed a police report, despite anticipating family backlash. Detective Ramirez took the case seriously, particularly after viewing my security camera footage and recorded confrontation. Family identity theft is unfortunately common, she explained while documenting evidence. The perpetrators count on victims not pressing charges due to relationship pressure. The police report triggered preventive measures from my bank and credit bureau, likely preventing unauthorized access attempts detected days later. As predicted, my parents arrived unannounced the following weekend, demanding I drop the police report. Their physical presence, my father's intimidating stance, my mother's theatrical distress might once have compelled compliance. Now, with security personnel present at my request, their tactics appeared transparent rather than overwhelming. Your sister made a mistake out of desperation, Mom pleaded. Involving police is extreme. Planning identity theft isn't a mistake, I countered calmly. It's a series of deliberate decisions reflecting values you've reinforced. Dad shifted to threats. If you continue this vindictive behavior, you'll destroy this family. The family was built on inequality that became unsustainable, I noted. I'm not responsible for the consequences of patterns I repeatedly attempted to address. Their inability to manipulate my response visibly destabilized them. Without my compliance with established roles, they had no effective strategy for regaining control. We raised you better than this, Mom insisted tearfully. You raised me to prioritize others at my own expense, I corrected. I've learned healthier patterns. I hope someday you will too. Their departure without resolution marked the final break from hopes of imminent family reconciliation. The comprehensive betrayal, not just Cassidy's actions, but my parents' endorsement of them, clarified the depth of dysfunction underlying our relationships. That evening, I processed conflicting emotions, grief for the family connection. I'd always sought relief at establishing consequences for violation, sadness for their continued struggles and pride in maintaining boundaries, despite intense pressure. The hardest part of enforcing boundaries with family, Dr. Williams observed during our emergency session, is grieving the relationship you deserved while accepting the reality of what exists. You're mourning both the past disappointments and future hopes simultaneously. This framework helped organize my emotional response. I wasn't merely reacting to specific betrayals, but to the dissolution of lifelong patterns and expectations. The grief felt appropriate rather than excessive, honoring the significance of family bonds while acknowledging their dysfunction. Through this challenging period, my developing support system proved invaluable. Amber provided practical assistance with security measures. Thomas offered emotional support without attempting to fix circumstances beyond my control. Colleagues respected my boundaries around personal disclosure while providing professional normality. Most significantly, I maintained self-care practices rather than reverting to self-neglect during crisis, a substantial departure from lifelong patterns. I continued therapy appointments, preserved sleep routines, maintained nutrition and exercise, and honored emotional needs without apology or justification. This integration of boundary enforcement with appropriate self-care represented genuine transformation rather than temporary adjustment. The family crisis revealed how thoroughly I'd internalized healthier patterns, replacing programmed responses with conscious choices aligned with authentic values. 1 year after leaving my parents' house, I stood in my kitchen preparing dinner for friends, occasionally glancing at the calendar where the anniversary was subtly marked. The date carried emotional weight without overwhelming significance recognition of the journey, without defining my current identity. The transformation extended beyond living arrangements to comprehensive life changes. Professionally, my regional manager position had expanded to include mentoring, junior staff members, relationships, where I freely shared knowledge without experiencing exploitation. The feedback loop of genuine appreciation for contribution without expectation of self-sacrifice reinforced healthier relationship patterns. My apartment had evolved from basic functional space to personalized sanctuary reflecting developing self-knowledge. Photographs of chosen family adorned walls alongside art selected for personal meaning rather than others' approval. The space accommodated both solitude and community, according to my authentic needs rather than external expectations. Most significantly, my relationship with Michael, formerly Thomas, who preferred his middle name in personal contexts, had developed into meaningful partnership based on mutual support rather than codependence. His understanding of family complexity, having navigated similar dynamics with his sister, created space for processing without judgment. The morning mail brought an unexpected letter from my parents, their first communication in nearly 3 months. The formal envelope contained a handwritten note, rather than the anticipated legal threats following my police report about Cassidy's identity theft attempt. Megan, we're writing to acknowledge we've made mistakes in our family relationships. Your departure has forced difficult reflections. We haven't been fair in our expectations or consistent in our support of both daughters. While we may not agree with all your perspectives, we recognize our role in creating current circumstances. We're selling the house next month and moving to a smaller place closer to Uncle Steve. If you're willing, we'd appreciate discussing financial planning for our retirement. Hope you're well. Love, Mom and Dad. The note contained partial acknowledgement without complete ownership recognition of mistakes, without specifying harmful behaviors, admission of unfair expectations, without addressing the systematic favoritism that defined our family. Dynamic. Most tellingly, it transitioned directly from minimal accountability to financial guidance requests, revealing their continued perception of my primary value as resource rather than daughter. After thoughtful consideration, I crafted a measured response. Thank you for acknowledging some patterns that contributed to our current relationship. I'm relieved you're making practical adjustments to align finances with current circumstances. While I'm not positioned to advise on your retirement planning, I can recommend several excellent financial advisors who specialize in late career transitions. I remain open to rebuilding our relationship with appropriate professional support when you're ready for that step. Wishing you well with your move. Sincerely, Megan. The response maintained boundaries while offering limited engagement, neither complete rejection nor unprotected vulnerability. Dr. Williams described this approach as differentiated compassion, extending kindness without assuming responsibility for others' circumstances or emotional management. My sister's situation continued along predictable patterns. Social media documented her employment instability, customer service positions abandoned due to toxic environments, likely accountability requirements. Creative endeavors started enthusiastically, then discarded when requiring sustained effort. Relationship dramas with similarly unstable partners. Her most recent status update revealed her current circumstances, moving in with Brian, so excited for our new chapter together, number fresh start, number new beginnings, followed 3 weeks later by back at mom and dad's while figuring out next steps. Sometimes the universe has other plans. Number, resilient, number, comeback. The cycle repeated consistently initial enthusiasm for independence without developing necessary skills, inevitable failure returned to parental support, renewed determination to find herself through another unsustainable venture. Without intervention to develop competence and accountability, her pattern appeared tragically fixed. My parents' financial reality finally forced difficult decisions. Their house sold for less than expected in a challenging market. The retirement they'd envisioned maintaining their lifestyle while supporting Cassidy indefinitely proved mathematically impossible. Their scaled-back plans included delayed retirement, reduced expenses, and uncomfortable conversations with Cassidy about sustainable support. Extended family reported these adjustments occurring with significant resistance. Cassidy reportedly couldn't comprehend reduced financial support despite their diminished resources. My father struggled with identity loss after downsizing to a smaller home without the status markers he valued. My mother vacillated between resentment of necessary changes and practical adaptation to new circumstances. Through various channels, I received clear indications of family members sharing my circumstances with others, some attempting to pressure my return, others expressing new understanding of my decisions. Aunt Linda reported that my grandmother had firmly told my parents, "You treated those girls differently their whole lives." Megan finally refused to accept it. Good for her. This public acknowledgement of previously unspoken dynamics represented significant shift in family narrative. The story evolved from ungrateful daughter abandons family to more nuanced recognition of long-standing inequality finally reaching unsustainable breaking point. As family perspectives adjusted, I faced complex decisions regarding boundaries and connection. After extensive reflection and therapy discussions, I determined balanced engagement parameters. 1. Written communication only with parents initially transitioning to brief in-person meetings in public locations, if written exchanges demonstrated consistent respect. 2. No financial entanglements under any circumstances. 3. Limited structured contact with Cassidy only with demonstrated accountability for previous violations. 4. Clear consequences for boundary infractions, including contact suspension if necessary. 5. Professional mediation for any significant relationship rebuilding attempts. These guidelines provided framework for potential reconciliation without compromising personal well-being or enabling continued dysfunction. The approach acknowledged family connections' importance while prioritizing psychological safety and relational health. My mother tested these boundaries, almost immediately sending emotionally manipulative texts when my firm boundaries letter arrived. After everything we sacrificed for you, this is how you treat family, and your sister is devastated by your coldness. Rather than engaging with emotional bait, I responded factually. I've outlined conditions for rebuilding trust after significant violations. These boundaries aren't punishment but necessary protection. I remain open to relationship when these conditions are respected. The response established pattern of engagement based on principles rather than emotional manipulation, a fundamental shift from established family dynamics. Meanwhile, I focused on building chosen family connections that demonstrated healthy relationship patterns. Amber and her husband David became regular dinner companions. Colleagues evolved into friends through shared interests beyond work. My book club provided intellectual stimulation and diverse perspectives. Michael's family modeled functional dynamics despite normal human complications. These relationships illustrated crucial distinctions between normal conflict within basically healthy systems versus systematic dysfunction. Disagreements occurred without contempt. Mistakes received appropriate apology without eternal guilt. Differences generated curiosity rather than judgment. Individual needs balanced with collective consideration rather than demanding martyrdom. During this anniversary period, I encountered others from similar family backgrounds through an expanded support network. Patricia, a software developer who left her emotionally abusive parents 5 years earlier, offered valuable perspective on long-term healing. The first year focuses on establishing boundaries and processing immediate trauma, she explained during our coffee meeting. The second year often involves reckoning with deeper identity questions: who am I beyond my family-assigned role? The grief can actually intensify as you recognize everything you didn't receive, but healing accelerates simultaneously. Her insights validated my experience while offering hopeful trajectory. The pain hadn't disappeared, but had transformed from overwhelming acute distress to manageable processing of specific aspects. Grief integrated into expanding identity rather than defining it completely. Most meaningful connections came through volunteering with a mentorship program for young adults transitioning from dysfunctional homes to independent living. My experience provided relevant guidance for others navigating similar challenges. Helping others establish healthy boundaries and recognize manipulation tactics reinforced my own healing progress. "You're describing exactly how I feel," exclaimed Jamie, a 19-year-old establishing independence from controlling parents during our mentoring session. "I thought something was wrong with me for wanting basic respect." These relationships created purpose from painful experience, transforming personal healing into community contribution without minimizing either component's significance. As the evening of my independence anniversary arrived, I hosted a small gathering in my home-chosen family, celebrating authentic connection rather than obligatory association. Amber brought her legendary chocolate cake. Michael arranged wildflowers in my favorite colors. Coworkers contributed favorite dishes from diverse cultural backgrounds. My mentee Jamie attended her first adult dinner party with nervous excitement. The contrast between this warm gathering and tension-filled family dinners of my past couldn't have been starker. Conversation flowed without walking on eggshells. Laughter emerged naturally rather than strategically. Contributions received genuine appreciation rather than criticism or entitlement. As we raised glasses in informal toast, I found myself reflecting on the circular journey from that fateful dinner a year ago to this healing gathering. To family we choose, I offered simply, and to the courage to build lives aligned with our authentic selves. The responding warmth in the room, genuine connection based on mutual respect rather than obligation, represented everything I'd sought throughout my journey. The circle completed not by returning to dysfunction, but by creating something healthier from difficult beginnings. Later that evening, after guests departed, I sat quietly in my living room contemplating the path forward. My family of origin remained significantly dysfunctional, despite incremental changes forced by circumstance. Full reconciliation might never occur if they remained unwilling to acknowledge systemic patterns rather than isolated mistakes. Yet my well-being no longer depended on their recognition or validation. The growth I'd experienced professionally, relationally, emotionally, spiritually stemmed from internal development rather than external approval. My worth existed independently of their ability to perceive it. The journey hadn't ended but had fundamentally transformed. Whatever came next, whether eventual family healing or permanent separation, would occur from foundation of authentic selfhood rather than desperate seeking of approval never freely given. Sometimes, leaving home becomes the only way to truly find yourself. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't respect your worth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your authentic path. Thank you so much for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is more supportive than the one you're born into. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.